The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the management and staff of Guardian Radio.
Wake up, it's a new day. Wake up, it's a new day.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Blend Business on this Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. Welcome back to our Morning Blend listeners. Once again, I'm Dwight Strachan along with Agnessa Lundy. And we all remember history being made last week with the SpaceX rocket booster landing in the Exumas. And people are still talking about it. Many questions still being asked about it. Some folks have been playing a very big role in all of this. Very pleased to welcome from Bron Limited. We have the principal with the environmental division, Mark Daniels, and the associate principal with the Earth division, Agnessa Lundy. Great to have you with us. Good morning.
Good morning, Dwight. Good morning, Bahamas.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, so we're going to talk more about SpaceX in a bit, but just tell us about Bron. You all are development consultants.
Yes.
Explain to us what that means.
Okay. Bron is a multidisciplinary development consulting firm. What that means is that we manage different types of projects. These projects could be remote island or luxury resort, residential properties, coastal and waterfront projects. We handle environmental projects. So we have a number of disciplines, as mentioned. We have civil engineering, structural engineering, coastal engineering, architecture, project management, environmental, geomatics. So we're a turnkey solution for developers looking to execute projects successfully in the Bahamas.
All right. So, and how long have you been around now? I think we had Bron on when they first came about, but remind folks.
We have over 20 years of experience. We started out as Caribbean Coastal Services. We also had a number of other companies that we functioned under for various services. And so we had our geomatics division, we had an ENCO division doing structural, and we brought them all together under Bron recently.
SpaceX, how did this partnership come about? Exactly, and about your role with this whole, what we're seeing right now.
Right. In the development consulting sphere, any project pretty much starts the same way. You get a lead of some sort, whether that is someone picks up the phone and calls you, and that can happen from word of mouth. We find that we get lots of referrals from previous clients. Also, we work closely with the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection. So for an environmental project, if a developer, they usually begin their approvals process starting out with DEPP, that's Department of Environmental Planning and Protection. They will provide guidance to that developer for how to get through the approvals process. And then they're usually given a list of consultants who are approved by that agency for them to contact. And we're one of those on that consultant list. So that's how our clients usually reach out to us, either from the recommendations list or word of mouth.
Right. All right. So what have you done so far in regards to this project?
So we first began this project from March of last year when it first came to, we first got the connection with SpaceX. Being their environmental consultants for the first landing to ever happen in international waters, and they wanted to do it here in the Bahamas. With any project, again, that we approach, the first thing we ask the client is, give us all the information you have on the project and what it is you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to build a resort, a golf course, a marina, each client and each project would have done their own independent research. They would have had design drawings. And we usually ask for information before we decide to take on a project. So taking on this project required us producing an environmental baseline statement, and that was under the guidance of the DEPP. When it comes to environmental compliance, there are different levels of documentation. The baseline statement provides exactly as you said. this is the environment, this is what's documented, this is what's in the public sphere, this is the data that's out there. And you provide that report with an alignment of the proposed project activities, and then there's a discussion of mitigation and possible impacts. It's usually not as detailed as an environmental impact assessment, which tends to dive into the sections a bit more. But for this project, we were contracted and instructed to do an environmental baseline statement.
Right. Okay. So you said you started in March, and this was handed in, I think it was June last year?
We submitted in March.
You submitted in March?
Yeah, we submitted the baseline statement in March. There was some interesting time. Most clients want their projects to go off quickly as possible. But we turned that around in about a month's time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then we had a following document, the environmental management plan. So the baseline statement says, this is what's there. These are the potential impacts. The management plan says, for this project activity, this is how it's to be managed in a way that will mitigate potential environmental impacts identified in either the baseline statement or the impact assessment. So that EMP, I think that's probably what we got it in June.
Okay.
And as time went on, those documents get updated depending on changes to the project.
All right. So was an EIA required?
No.
No. How come?
That's not essentially under our purview. That's a decision. That's a decision that's made by the DEPP, and the regulations doesn't state that all projects require an EIA. If they're going to get a CEC, which is a Certificate of Environmental Clearance from DEPP, there is some level of environmental documentation that's done, and it's up to their discretion what it is that's produced. So based off of the project, the project was a transient activity. It's the landing of a booster rocket that, from research, has been shown has had a very high success rate, and when executed as expected, very minimal environmental impact to be expected.
All right, so I'm going to go back over all these in a bit.
Yeah, no problem.
But right now, since last week, what have you been doing?
So in the days leading up to the landing, we were doing marine assessments, avian assessments, terrestrial assessments, monitoring air quality, water quality, noise measurements. This would have been in and around the area that would have been slated for the landing zone. There was produced a couple of graphics that people would have seen and would have been circulated, which would have been identified as hazard zones, that this is the area that this booster would come down in. It was a very high confidence in its accuracy, and it landed where they said it would. So in and around those areas, on the marine side, we conducted those surveys. For the terrestrial surveys, we looked at areas in the neighboring islands of Eleuthera, Cat Island, and Exuma to conduct terrestrial surveys to see where the avian life was before, during, and immediately after.
Right.
Excuse me. Also doing air quality and noise measurements as well. On the day of the launch, we were out there on the water for 14 plus hours. And just kudos and shout out to other agencies that were involved, Civil Aviation, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, Port Authority, all coordinating to make this successful, the Ministry of Tourism. And so on the day of, we were on the Royal Bahamas Defense Force Lignum Vitae vessel. Again, that crew that was there, awesome crew. The conditions on the water, if you ever done marine work, aren't always conducive for humans. Can be a little rough.
Can imagine.
Long days. They were very there from 8 o'clock that morning. It touched down just before 6:30. We were out there doing surveys on the day of, before, during, after it landed. And as people would have seen, it is a spectacular sight to see, and it came down. And we were all happy that it landed without incident.
Yeah. All right. So since then, have you still been out there? Are you doing more tests to see if anything has changed from what you saw in the baseline report?
At the moment now, we're processing the data we took the week of. As we approach the possibility of any future landings, we will continue long-term monitoring under the direction of the DEPP. I don't want to forget NASA is here. Is NASA still on the line? We can't have that. NASA is a very important part of this, and I want to make sure she's here.
And that's jump in whenever you want to, whenever you can.
Hi, I'm still here. Everything Mark said is accurate. I just want to reiterate a big shout out to the Royal Bahamas Defense Force team. They were there with the monitoring team, and they were also monitoring the hazard areas just to ensure that other vessels, just to make sure everybody was safe. They really were very helpful. There was a support department involved, civil aviation, as you would imagine, right? civil aviation also had to review regulations and adapt, right? So there was a lot of technical coordination involved, and I would say a lot of the different agencies, even a DPP, right? They had to manage and figure out a rocket landing, right?
Yeah. Okay, so lots of questions.
Question, Dwight.
Yeah, the question go on.
So I think my question may be two-part. This is the first time that we've had it land here in the Bahamas, but I'm certain that they've had other landings. Do we know the impacts of those? And also, there was a mixed response from the Bahamian public. Some people were thrilled, and some people had concerns about the marine life, the sea life, all sorts of things, right? When will we have an idea of if there was any impact at all to the marine life or the surrounding areas?
That's you or me.
I mean, I can try to answer. So we were also very concerned about that, right? And so that is the reason why the DPP and Bron, we had really in-depth conversations with the SpaceX team, their environmental engineering team, really to try and figure that out. We're like, hey, we understand that you would like to do, several launches / landings, but we really want to monitor this very closely and determine what the impacts would be for the Bahamas. So that was the first part of, I think that answers a part of your question. And some of the reasons we conducted the AV surveys was really because we were concerned about the IDAs, right? And so, yeah, like I said, there was a team.
What's that?
Important bird areas.
Okay.
Right. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No.
Sorry for the acronym.
Important bird areas. Okay.
Important bird areas, right? And the DPP was adamant we needed to be removed from all protected areas, right? So MPA's marine protected areas. And that was the reason we really planned to create or develop, produce the post-launch report where we would compare baseline information with information collected the day of the launch and information or data collected after the launch.
And to further on her response, once again, with any project, we ask the client for documentation they have of their project, and their research has been done. So,
Okay.
so SpaceX, they've done and produced their own research. The FAA, if you look at the EBS, there is an EIA that's been attached. That was an environmental assessment attached that was done for the FAA that looked at similar parameters that we examined in our EBS. Looking at their EIA and the methodology that they used, the results that they came up with, it also provided us with more confidence in what the impacts could potentially be here in the Bahamas. And that's how we handle it in most projects in terms of using research. I know persons jumped on the desktop research comment, but that's how any project begins. You look at you make a decision from there.
So are you bringing this
Right.
down into short term, medium, and long term, or how extensive will this research be that you're doing post this landing?
So this is around the immediate landing of the booster. As people would have seen in the paper, there are plans for future launches. There's no dates proposed, but each landing, each landing will require its own set of environmental approvals. And so it does not have a carte blanche approval to continue landing rockets. So we learn from each one. We do a lessons learned, we'll do a debriefing, and we look at potentially what the next landing may look like. And we will adjust our methodology from there using input from DEPP, SpaceX, the public, subject matter experts. So each time we will look at it with.
So, those of us who were in Nassau, I remember that night very vividly, and I thought something. The sound was so loud. We were in Nassau, and of course, this happened off the Exumas. There, some people felt the earthquake, some people felt different things, right, all over Nassau. With the loudness of the landing, are we confident that those sounds are not sounds that would create havoc underwater for us?
So And those concerns people have are valid. From what we've gotten from various reports, depending on where you were on each island and which side of the island you were on, you would have felt and perceived the sound differently. We were the closest to the booster when it came down, and so we were within 2.5 nautical miles of the drone ship.
Who's we?
We being the Bron team doing
Okay.
environmental monitoring and the Defense Force crew. There was
Okay.
also the tugboat
And
for SpaceX. Yes, DEP was also there, and the support vessels. And when it came down, we had our sound meters there, and it registered 99.1 decibels on an A-weighted scale, which essentially is like a thunderclap. However, sound travels differently over water than on land. It does not penetrate water the same way that it does on land,
Okay.
and so it'll be perceived differently. From the studies that's been shown and been done with sonic booms and its impact on being transmitted into the water, those sound waves die off within the first 30 meters of entering into the water. So, for example, if where we were on the boat, yes, we heard what sounded, I would describe it like a loud thunderclap. It sounded like New Year's Day fireworks, but somebody on the south side of New Providence said that they felt like their house may have vibrated. And so just like thunder, which is
Felt
what
like
it's
an
compared to,
explosion.
right?
Right. Yeah.
And so it's how sound travels over water and interacts with solid objects once it gets on land. And these reports and what people are saying is what will be taken into consideration for future environmental assessments for any future potential landings. And it's all a part of the lessons learned process.
So I think the question was asking about marine life, but what about birds? Even here in New Providence, hearing a loud thunderbolt or thunderclap or explosion sound like that in the early evening, what would that do? Could that have any impact?
Based off of our team in the various islands, they didn't see impacts that would have happened during the landing. That is the roosting part of the day, so birds are typically getting ready to go sleep at night, tucker in for the evening. It would be a startle effect, similar to a thunderclap for the bird life.
Yeah.
And also in terms of where it was in terms of location, it's not near, let's say, any small keys or islands. It's where birds are traveling across the water at that time of evening to roost. And so coming into the atmosphere, in which it will cross through into atmosphere, and the likelihood for bird strikes because of the noise and the sound is very low.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit. Why the Bahamas? What's the reason why this area was chosen for the landings?
Nancy, you want to take this one?
Okay. So as we mentioned in our the environmental documents, the purpose is to one of the main purposes is to launch a low orbit satellite to help bridge communication gaps with the Starlink internet service, right? And to program the rocket to get to its target location at the low orbit. I want to say location. I'm not a rocket science, so bear with me. I'm doing my best here, right? So it uses less fuel to launch from Florida to get it to where it needs to go in order to bridge the communication gap. And it helps, and it has better accuracy than if they were to launch it and aim to land it somewhere else.
There's also the physics behind it. When you launch an object into space, it's going to keep that orbit that it trajects into space.
Right.
And if you were to draw a line pretty much around the planet, that will be the trajectory for these satellites. So it'll cover the Bahamas and it'll cover other parts of the planet where SpaceX wants to have Starlink. So that's another reason why the Bahamas are chosen. We're just in that angle that's needed to fill that gap in orbit.
Okay, all right. So with the management plan and with the baseline report, are you going to have to do that again for each one of these?
Yes, and this is also going to be guided by the DEPP. The baseline, an updated baseline statement will take into consideration what happened in the first landing. Management plans, they're considered living documents, so they get updated even while a project is going on. So if this were a typical development project, during construction, a management plan can be updated based on on-the-ground conditions, unforeseen circumstances, or some change to the design plan. So, yes.
Is there?
Sorry?
The question?
Is there a period like this just happened the other day? So is there like a period of rest before another launch would be considered? Is there a recommendation for timelines in between them happening?
At the moment, there's no projected timeline for any subsequent landings, and we anticipate that discussion not happening until the post-launch report is completed. The operation is looked at holistically on all sides from all agencies, and then just like any other client, they would love to have their projects continue on schedules that meet their internal schedule. But we're going to take our time and make sure that we tick all the boxes need to be ticked and we follow all laws and regulations.
I don't know if I expect you to answer this question, but it is interesting. You said that the baseline report was done last March.
Mm-hmm.
The government just made that public last week. Is that unusual? Have you seen something like that before? I don't know. It's strange. Is it strange?
It's not strange for the document that was produced. Mm-hmm. So if you produce a baseline statement, typically that is not a document that's circulated unless it's specified that a public consultation for a baseline statement is needed. If it was deemed an EIA was to be done, a public consultation is automatically a part of that process.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
So as further to Dwight's question, though, this event that occurred, I would say impacted Bahamians, all of us, right? Wherever you lived, many people were so unaware that they would hear or feel some impacts from something that happened so far away from the capital. Do you feel, in hindsight, like communication about, what to expect, communication about that this won't have any confidence in what's happening? Do you think that can be or should be a recommendation for future landings? Because I feel that there was a lot of franticness around this, particularly across social media, with people trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, looking at this recent landing and the reactions from the public, the notices that went out were mainly geared towards mariners in the area. It was geared towards persons looking to view the launch. And going forward, I would say, this is the beginning of a relationship between SpaceX and the Bahamas, where we talk about impacts and we talk about potential environmental impacts. I also think that there are some beneficial impacts that come from this. I think that the education around the science of the booster landing, I think that more input from subject matter experts in the Bahamas who want to be a part of the conversation would benefit future landings. But again, it was on Eleuthera the day after and speaking with someone I know, and they told me that when they were in primary school, they saw a BPL pole truck come to their yard to plant a pole. And he saw that truck, and from that day, because he saw what the truck was doing, he told himself, I'm going to work on a BPL pole truck one day. And 30 years later, that is what he's doing and excelling at his job. And what he said was that the impact of seeing that booster landing in our waters, that Bahamians were here helping to lead the effort, assisting from multiple agencies on multiple sides, that we don't know what that impact will be to the future scientists, to the future engineers, for the future of many Bahamians. And so I know that there are concerns from the public, and they are valid. And as this relationship continues, we would look to address those concerns and approach each project as an independent landing and make sure we continue to improve.
So
can I just say one more thing, Dwight? I also noticed that there was some excitement from some people on social media. There were people who came out and they were saying, if you want to see something spectacular, look this direction or whatever, which means that, of course, there's a mixed reaction. But I think that having people that generate that type of excitement will help those who are not in the know or don't know what to look for, don't know what's happening or whatever, to really see it without jaded eyes. So perhaps the next time that could also be a consideration, having information, and maybe it's not for you to do, maybe it's for SpaceX or whoever is doing it, to put that out there that this direction is the best direction to see something spectacular. Get your cameras out, capture video, maybe give a prize or something. I don't know, but just get us more on board with what's happening. And I don't know, maybe you can share your thoughts on that.
I agree. I think the more people know, the more it benefits everyone. They're aware of what's going on. Whether you're the person that wants to have a spectacular view, that you don't want to be startled by the unknown, or you have a concern about some of the environmental impacts. Yeah. And so once again, going forward, we welcome all comments, criticism, feedback, and you can reach out to discuss any concerns about the project and potential future landings.
We're talking with Mark Daniels and Agnessa Lundy with Bron Limited, the development consultants involved with the SpaceX rocket booster landings. All right, so we see in the newspapers today the director of DEP saying that the EIA is not needed for this. Do you think that is that possible that this could change going forward, especially with the reaction from the public, or what's your take on that?
I would leave that up to the director, and whatever we are instructed to execute, we will do that to the best of our ability.
Tell us more about that. What would that look like if an EIA were required? What would that entail on your part?
It just may require more of the baseline surveys to be conducted along a longer period of time. It could require that additional types of studies are done, and so it can vary. The economic impact of the project is essentially spelled out more, and there's a thorough study done of that and those impacts on the socioeconomics of the stakeholder groups. And it's once again require terms of reference that will spell out what will be included in the EIA if needed.
All right, so
I want to push you a little bit on that simply because your organization, Bron, has developed a very strong reputation of, environmental protection. Mr. Palacios, he speaks a lot about the impacts of hurricanes and what to do, and all of this very reputable information, and it's built up a reputation of being vested in environmental issues for the Bahamas. So from my perspective, listening, I would say that it's something that the organization should push for or advocate for stronger involvement. And yes, the project may have its guidelines, you know best. And so giving some pushback to that to make it a requirement that your organization or organization is similar that does the work that you do stay attached to these programs and also do deeper research so that public confidence can continue to grow, because our confidence in you is crucial also to the success of any future launches, because we want to know that our environment is safe, that it's protected, and this is something good for the nation. So I would say we need you to push for an organization and deeper research in initiatives like this.
And I thank you for that feedback. And just to clarify, we do push. We're not taking this as a joke. We live here, we work here, our children are here. Everyone who works at Bron, we work as a team, we win as a team. And it isn't just the people that are going to be on the vessel monitoring. We have an amazing support system of our team, and everyone has been pouring their energy into this project since it came on our plate. And I appreciate persons' concerns again. I would say for persons who maybe have not read any of the documents, I know they're a little chunky, go ahead and read it. Go ahead and read it. Read what we presented. Read all the research that's been there. And then provide feedback on how you think it can be improved.
So with the baseline report, often we saw words like negligible impact or minimal impact. If, God forbid, there is a mishap with the landing, what is the worst case scenario?
Well, there are a number of what you call anomaly scenarios. So I guess most people think of a catastrophic failure as the worst case scenario, and it would be where that's located, and when and if and when that would happen. Based off of the research that's there's an over 99% success rate. So that's why when we looked at this operation, it wasn't one of the major concerns for this landing. And once the landing goes off successfully as it did, so for example, during the landing, the amount of CO2 that's produced is less than a Boeing 737 that takes off from Lyndon Pinling International Airport. If there were, for some reason, the fuel were to spill, that fuel is less than 4 bathtubs of liquid. And the type of fuel it is pretty much liquid oxygen, which would dissipate into air once it is released. And the byproducts of the booster, carbon dioxide, soot, carbon monoxide, water, essentially. And you're in very deep waters. That's not on 30 feet of water around pristine coral reefs. That's in 3,000 to 5,000 feet of water, which, corals aren't going to be in those areas of deep sea corals. But again, looking at the scenarios, looking at the statistics and the research that's been done, that's not what we anticipate to happen. And so it'll be negligible with successful landings.
Yeah. Were you surprised by any of the commentary that you've seen or heard since the landing? Anything like this is people like really out there and not getting it?
I've seen some of the comments. I think they're genuinely people who, this is the first time this has happened in the Bahamas and internationally for rocket booster landing. So there's definitely a learning curve, like an exposure, and people just learning about the technology and feeling confident about it. And I think a majority of people fit into that category. There's always going to be, sidewall comments and people who have personal opinions. But the facts are what we've presented in our document. The facts are the research that's been done. And if there are impacts that happen that aren't foreseen, then we will look for the proof of that and then adjust our methodology going forward.
Yeah. We've got quite a few text messages coming in, and you can continue to text us, folks, 422-4796. All right, so based on what you're saying, somebody's asking as well, did we not know that NASA was going to experience the boom, or was it not a certainty, or what was the reality there? What did we know before that happened?
It was expected that it would be heard. It was expected that the flight would be seen by everyone in the country, that the boom would be heard at least by islands that were immediately surrounding the launch site. So that would be Eleuthera, Cat Island, Exuma, New Providence.
Okay. All right. This text is asking, did you deploy sensors or cameras to measure the number of sharks, whales, turtles, etc.?
Those types of sensors, so that would either be that you send down a sub to monitor the area because that's deep water, or you use underwater acoustics. We did have a hydrophone in the water that was recording ocean sounds. On the day of, and while we were doing our marine surveys, we were looking for breaches by marine mammals or other animals in the area. There are other techniques for determining movements. There are tagged species that are moving through. And those persons we can always collaborate with on potential future landings if they have data to share.
Yeah. You can take a call? Yeah?
Go for it.
Okay, let's take this call. Good morning, caller. You are on the air.
Yes, great show as usual, Dwight, new guest. How you doing?
Thank you very much.
Right, okay, I have a question for your guest, right? Okay, he's from the Bahamas and everything, right? And he knows how Bahamians think. Wouldn't it make more sense if the company actually educated the Bahamian people and the citizens at least a year in advance about the program, so they alleviate any concerns that people have? And also, right, I think that my personal view on this is that they didn't take out a noise pollution situation pertaining to rockets. I think that's going to be problematic in the future. But I also think that it's a good idea. It provides the country more than just sun, and sea for the tourists, and it should attract a lot of people coming to the Bahamas. So that's a plus on that end. So I hope things actually turns out for the best and nothing bad happens.
Okay, thank you very much. First part of the question, was that up to Bron? Was that up to SpaceX? Is that the government? Whose responsibility would that have been if that were going to be the case for a longer education period?
That's probably a combination of all parties involved. It's led by the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection and their mandate for providing the environmental approval for this project. I think there are also other agencies that are involved. Again, Civil Aviation, Port Authority. There's probably a Ministry of Education component to this, again, because it is a historic event. And the feedback that we get now, the discussion has, I would say it's begun, but discussion is definitely going on now. And I think there is room for more public education.
So maybe you all don't get the crazy messages we get, but
Your phone is low.
twice there's two different people texting to say that SpaceX is responsible for the weather we're seeing today. Now that's insanity, right?
That's not the project we were signed up for.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh boy. Oh boy. All right. So you talk about when will we see that final report on this landing? You're working on that now, is that right?
Yeah, we're working on that now. In the EMP, we listed up to 8 weeks for us to produce that. We'll push to make sure that it's done and people can know what the impacts were from this landing. And
Well, do you share that publicly, or does that go to the government and they have to share it with us?
it'll be submitted for review by the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection, and then typically they get released to the public once it gets approved.
Okay.
Typically when?
Oh, I can't speak to that timeline.
Because that stuff was last year. We just saw it.
Yeah,
Anyway.
so you
But
can
that's
count
them.
it,
That's
yeah.
not a Bron issue. That's them, right?
it's not a
Okay.
Bron.
'Cause just anyway. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Dwight. Good morning to your guests as well. The initial information that we got that there was some, 19 or 20 of the scheduled landing. Is that correct?
That is what SpaceX has outlined as their overall program. There just isn't a timeline on when the other landings would happen as yet.
Okay, so I mean, that's not tentatively set for in this calendar year, or what? Or is it 19 in this calendar year? Because we got about, 10 months left, so it's like 2 a month.
No dates have been discussed as yet for any subsequent launches, and I will guarantee that once that is determined, that will be shared with the public.
All right.
Okay, thanks a lot. All right, so this is exciting work that you all are doing, without a doubt. And if people were inspired by what happened last week and now hearing about the work that you've done and will be doing, what do they need to do if they want to be like you, Mark, and Agnessa? Tell us about things people should be thinking about.
Nessa, you go ahead.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
I was saying, if you're interested in becoming a development consultant and if you're inspired by the landing last week, what should you be doing?
Oh, I would say learn about environmental science, learn about the different environmental consultants in the field. There's quite a few companies. You can study or look into marine science, botany, and now aeronautical science, right?
I think it's important to mention that there are a number of environmental consultants who work in the private sector who started out with either governmental agencies or nonprofit organizations, root for the love for the environment. So I don't want people to not think of volunteering and joining organizations that are working on the environment. The Bahamas National Trust, Nature Conservancy, Brief, Friends of the Environment. You have a number of other agencies out there, Brimrow, that are doing work to learn more about the environment, share information, and advance the study and research. And, what we work on, the types of projects we work on, we're proud. Bahamian-owned company, we're a young company, and we want to make paradise possible for everyone alike, including us.
So I have to ask this, as we only have about a minute left, but if in this period that you're doing this, looking at what happened, you find that there were some issues, there was some damage, some animals were impacted, what happens then?
And we go back to the overall design of the landing. We look at the parameters that can be adjusted. We get with SpaceX. Once again, this is not a landing that was planned. Even though the document went in, was begun last year, it's been 4 years in the making in terms of them programming this rocket to do this operation. And for each one, you look at all of the metrics that were measured during the launch, which happened in Florida, and the landing that was here in the Bahamas. Bahamas and make decisions going forward. It could be, location. It could be something with the design of the drone ship. A number of things you can look at, and we'd collaborate with DEP and SpaceX to find a way to mitigate that.
And do we know yet? We don't know when these are going to happen, but do we know if they're all going to take the same trajectory? Are they all going to be taking off from that part of Florida and landing in that part of the Exumas, or will there be some variation?
I think each launch and landing will have its own unique parameters. But so far, for this location that it landed in, it's the preferred location if it's going to happen within the territorial waters.
Okay.
I got a quick question, Dwight. There was a lot of talk about this being like a tourism type thing, there are people that move around to watch these sorts of things. Did you see in your observations while you're on sea or around the area that there were a lot of people flying in for this? And does this have the potential to be another level of tourism revenue building thing?
Yeah, I would say, we were stationed in Deep Creek, and on the day of the launch, there were flights coming into Deep Creek, persons who were viewing from South Eleuthera. There was a lot of boat traffic on the water, especially in the Exumas, who would have anchored a station off on the eastern side of Exuma to watch. Persons flying in on flights into Nassau who discovered that it was going on, and they can watch from their hotel rooms. SpaceX does have a phone, and we do think that there is potential for that. And, people can enjoy any future landings.
Yeah. And as we go, how can people get more information about this? Read the baseline report. Is it available on your websites, or what do people need to know?
It's posted on the Office of the Prime Minister's website. I think it's also on the Ministry of Tourism's website. I think it may have been posted on an online article with Guardian as well. And if you want to get copies of it, you can always contact the Department of Environmental Planning and Protection.
Okay. Mark Daniels and Agnessa Lundy, thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for being open and sharing this information. I didn't ask you about any money and stuff like that. I was had to restrain myself, but restrain myself. That's not for you. That's for the government. But thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. Great stuff.
We appreciate the opportunity, and thank you. We'll come back whenever you invite us again.
Wonderful. Break and be back to wrap things up. This is Morning Blend Business on Guardian Radio 96.9.